Hello everyone. Today is Saturday night and you are back with Olga show. We are happy to hear from you, and you can see us also tonight at one of our Ustream channels called Olga show. If you would not able to see us, it's okay. We're gonna provide you with the video later during the week. Actually, tomorrow would be ready for you, and you can see our interview we're gonna provide for you tonight on 92.3 FM and also u923fm.com. As always, we have guests at our show tonight. Hello, Tom McWilliams. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
You drove all the way from South Salita, no, Berkeley area.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what's I admire about Tom, that not only PhD in computer science from Stanford University and BS degree in electrical engineering from Carnegie, but also he had 4 acquired companies in the past, and now for about 5 years he working on another company with his other co-founders and having fun with it as always. So tell me about how you decided to go to electrical engineering. You grew up with 2 brothers, 1 sister, far away from Silicon Valley. Whereabout?
I grew up in Midwest. It was Cincinnati, Ohio, and then we moved to St. Louis, Missouri, where I went to junior high and high school.
And then you actually found out something about computers.
Yeah.
How that happened?
Well, actually, my brother had a book on computers self-taught by experiments. This is when I was in junior high school, and I was fascinated by that. And I would go off and reading the book. You could go to Radio Shack. You could buy transistors, things to make your own printed circuit boards, and you could build simple circuits. They're not really quote a computer, but they're elements of a computer: flip-flops, logic gates, and so forth. So I spent a lot of time. Starting in junior high, I was always drawn to computers and electronics, and then in high school I built a 16-bit little mini computer out of TTL logic, and that was like 230 chips in it, and I was just fascinated by it. And I also, during high school, I took summer classes in computer programming, learning how to program in Fortran, and I wrote a logic simulator, and I worked over also went over to Stanford or Washington University in St. Louis, took a course there on their Link computers, so an early lab computer by Digital Equipment Corporation. And then when I went to, I got admitted into Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh in electrical engineering, and when I got there, I had insights as to how to build a better logic simulator to simulate the logic to build computers, because the earlier ones I did, and you debug it in the hard way, in the lab, changing wires, fixing your circuits, and I got one of the professors there, Gordon Bell, let me use his computer account on the PDP-10 systems they had in the computer science department. These were large $1 million computers that the government had, funded at Carnegie Mellon. Carnegie Mellon was one of the main centers of excellence in the United States at the time. Like, it was MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, where the government had provided these large computers. And I spent a lot of the time going through Carnegie, working on my logic simulator. I designed a couple of computers, a very fast cache-based PDP-8 and a PDP-11. I actually built the PDP-11 and it ran in the lab. And then after I graduated from Carnegie, I got my bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering. I then got admitted to Stanford and came out to the West Coast. Had a summer job at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, working with a very famous physicist, Lowell Wood, and again my passion for computers was there. In the Livermore, they had very large, what they call supercomputers. At that time they were from CDC, like the 7600, and I thought, well, we could build a more cost-effective, high-end supercomputer out of more advanced, higher levels of integration with what they had in those machines with ECL logic. And we then ended up spending the next 5 years building 2 generations of these large supercomputers called the S1. In fact, the first one was called the S1 Mark I, and it was Had like 5,300 chips of Echo Logic on 12 large boards. They were wire wrap boards. The S1, that machine is actually on display at Stanford University in Gates Hall. But one of the things that I have to stop for a moment and credit that this was a phenomenal team. We did this work at Stanford with a whole group of people from the computer science department. It was Kurt Widows and I started it, but then over time, over the 5 years, we ended up probably with 20 people working there. There were like 3 professors and their students all involved in building these machines, the S1 Mark I and Mark IIA. And what was interesting about that is that in order to design these large machines with a small group of people, what we did was we automated the design. We created some software called the SCALD design system. And SCALD stands for Structured Computer Logic Design. And basically it let us enter in these graphical block diagrams into the computer interactively on some displays that they had at the Stanford AI lab. And then we had software which would automatically produce a set of magnetic tapes which we could send to a vendor who would actually wire the boards, these wire wrap boards, and get it built. So we automated this process, which at the time was mainly a manual process in most companies. It was before there was a lot of design automation for this type of work. And that's what Kurt and I both got our PhDs from Stanford, working based on the work we did on this automated software. And then in 1981, we ended up incorporating a company called Valid Logic Systems. And Valid basically commercialized the research that we did at Livermore and Stanford. It came out with a commercial version of the software, and 2 years later it went IPO, went public. And so that was a phenomenal experience. It's kind of an interesting story how that all happened. We were off working on the design of these computers, and there's this gentleman, Dr. Jerry Anderson, who had started 3 companies, who wanted to find some technology to go start another company, right? And he wanted to be the CEO. And he called one day to Livermore, and he wanted to talk to Kurt Widows, my partner. And Kurt said, I don't have time to talk to this guy. And he sat on hold for 20 or 30 minutes. The secretary came and said, he's still on hold. So Kurt finally accepted the phone call and talked to him. Well, the long story short is over the next year we had a lot of discussions. We ended up starting the company, which is Valid Logic. And one of the key lessons there was, here was a guy who had experience starting 3 companies, and he taught us all about starting companies and took us through that whole experience, right? We were the technologists, the engineers, but I think one of the reasons Valid was so successful was it had a combination of experienced management who had done through startups before, coupled with the engineers who had the technology. And after that experience, it's kind of like my conclusion was the best job in the world is starting companies. And so I went off and ended up starting, I'm now starting my 5th company. First one went public, 3 of them were acquired, and this one's, we're working on it. So.
Yeah, but you kind of skipped. So you liked how your first company was sold out, right?
Yes.
Went through IPO.
Went to IPO, yes.
And then you started a second company. How long did it take you to start a second company? Did you have a long vacation in Hawaii somewhere, or took a trip to Lake Tahoe?
Went to the Caribbean for a couple years.
Yeah. Well, actually, what happened was it went public in '83, and I stayed with the company for a couple of years. And at some point, I had some ideas. I heard a talk from a famous scientist at IBM, John Koch, about superscalar, how to make computers that could execute multiple instructions in parallel, which today is common, but back then it wasn't, right? And my passion was always actually more into the designing of the computers rather than just building the tools to design it. So about that point in time, Jeff Rubin and I decided to leave Valid, and we went off and started Key Computer. And Key Computer, we went off and we started, it took us, some number of months. We basically started the company fairly soon after we left Valid, within a month, and worked on it, and we raised money. And we raised venture capital. We raised $5 million. And then we were off working on it. In fact, we worked on it for about well, actually, after 18 months, we got acquired. But the interesting thing, one of the interesting lessons there was that it was a very interesting thing that one day, you know, I was sort of sitting there, should I go to this conference or not? There's a Data Quest conference. You know, should I take my time to go to this conference or not? And I said, okay, I'll go to the conference. And at the conference, I met a guy there. His name's Dave Anderson. He was a vice president at Amdahl. And we ended up having lunch. And then later we started working. You know, Amdahl was meeting with us, and we thought, well, maybe we thought they're going to invest. And at some point along the way, there was a meeting we had with the then chairman, Jack Lewis of Amdahl. And Jack says, well, I don't know why I'm in this meeting, but because I don't really want to invest, but would you like to be acquired? And we said, you know, that sound interesting, right? And a few months later, they acquired the company. And so then we became part of Amdahl. And the interesting thing later, after I got done with that, this was my second startup, right? I realized, you know, it was out of my control. The difference between we could have not gotten funded and gone broke, or we got acquired, right? And if I hadn't gone to that conference and they ended up acquiring the company, you know, it sort of shook my confidence. And so like, okay, I was lucky, right? We got acquired, everybody made money, you know, it was a good deal. And at that point in time, you know, after 2 startups, you know, I wasn't ready to go to another startup because I had enough stress. Startups can be very stressful. In fact, I find the stress went up in both of them. The first one, once we went public, it was much more stressful than before public, because then you see you got the stock, it's in the public marketplace, and it can go up and down out of your control, right? And you know, should you sell it? Should you not sell it? Can you sell it? Right? There's all kinds of rules in public companies. So that was stressful. And then once in the second company, it was more fun until we were in an acquisition, because then you get attached to it closing. See, so I concluded. Well, one of the lessons there, of course, is you know, stress comes from attachment. If you're attached to a particular outcome that's not in your control, right? That's when stress happens, because you know you feel, oh, it's got to happen this way. Like this, you need this. You don't want the stock to crash, right? But you can't control it. You know, it's a public company, right? So anyway, so I actually took some time off and didn't start a company for a while. I spent time in Amdahl, then I went to Silicon Graphics, and then in fact, at Silicon Graphics, it was a very interesting thing happened. While I was interviewing for the job at Silicon Graphics, I got to be interviewed by this then CEO of Silicon Graphics, which was named Ed McCracken, a fairly famous guy in the Valley. Before that, I had read in the newspaper about yoga. I read that Ed McCracken teaches yoga classes, and I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. So I'm interviewing with him, and I asked him about it. He went over his desk, brought me back a brochure to his class on yoga. So I took his class, and his class was really just about an introduction of what yoga is all about. And I ended up finding that this really drew my attention, because one of the things they taught in the class was that yoga helps you focus the mind. And if you can focus your mind is much stronger. And after all this stress, I found I was less focused. Stress basically defocuses the mind, right? So I got very passionate into yoga, and I found it was the antidote to recovering from the stress of 2 startups was yoga for me. And it also reconnected me. Well, why was my company successful versus failure? Was I lucky or not? And one of the things I learned in yoga was we have intuition. We have a part of us that sometimes can come up with an answer beyond logic. And yoga actually enhances that. Yoga is a way of enhancing your intuition, right? Your inner knowingness. And that kind of revived my faith that I should follow my passion and trust my feelings. And that's what I had done before. And after that, then I was ready to go do 3 more startups, right? Because I just follow my passion and my feelings, and I just see where it goes, right?
Great. So let's talk about your 5th company. As good times always go fast. Right. And actually, that's how I met him. I was telling my students, I teach yoga classes. And I was telling my students, wherever parties I go to, I always drawn or people come to me, and eventually during the conversation I find out that they're doing yoga somehow. Or they took the classes, or they started to approach yoga, and that's energy bringing us together, and same interest, obviously. So your fifth company has quite an interesting concept. It's make computer faster. You build software which can be attached to any computer hardware. Is that correct?
That's right.
And if you can give us some details, not all, not any confidentiality here.
Right.
We are live on air all over the world.
Right.
So what you can tell us, it's about 5 years old company?
No, it's, we started a little over 3 years ago. Company, what we're doing is, the company's name is Bay Storage Technology, and we are doing extremely high performance storage. So storage is something that everybody knows. It just stores data. And in large computers, you have these network attached storage systems, like, you know, from large vendors, things like EMC, NetApp are famous companies that do network attached storage. And there's a delay in latency to get in and out of that storage units. And we are building a system which is extremely fast. We can access across the network and back and access the data in under 10 microseconds. Typical a disk drive it's about 1,000 times faster than a normal disk drive, or about 10 times faster than the fastest flash devices out there that you plug in directly. And so what we are doing is it's software, and that's where we keep a copy of it in DRAM, but we've worked on some very low latency networking technology protocols that can run across InfiniBand or Ethernet technology, so that you can connect up your computers. And our fastest times are with InfiniBand, which is the computer technology that the world's fastest computers, or largest supercomputers at places like National Labs and other places, when they build thousands of machines connected together and they want to compute on a large problem. The common virtual network technology they use is InfiniBand. We got into this because one of my previous companies, Pascal, we actually designed and built the world's fastest InfiniBand adapters. And that company was bought. Eventually, Pascal was acquired by QLogic, and that technology has been sold to Intel. So if you go to Intel now, the InfiniBand technology that they resell is the technology we designed at Pascal. So we had a lot of expertise in how you build very fast communication technology.
And of course you had patents during that third or fourth company, which was sold eventually to Intel.
Well, that's right. And then the patents, when the company's acquired, they get all the intellectual property.
Right.
And when they sell it, they normally transfer it.
What are some uses and for your for your new technology?
Yeah.
Would we use it as a home computer? Would it be used on servers?
No, it would be typically used on. We're focusing on accelerating databases like enterprise databases or open source databases, because a database like that you have at Oracle or SAP. Or things like MySQL, all these things, they're very sensitive to how fast the storage is. If the storage is slow, the database is going to go slow because it's got to wait for the storage. So by making the storage extremely fast, we can make people's databases go much faster. And so they get the most performance and the most value out of their databases because they're not stalled waiting for storage.
Okay. So would this be used in cloud computing?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of our focuses is accelerating databases in the cloud. Right, and that's actually a current market trend that a lot of people are looking at. A lot of things are moving into the cloud, so people can outsource it, and they're including moving a lot of their databases. You know, some of the cloud companies, offer databases in the cloud, and we can accelerate those.
It speeds up instantiation of virtual appliances as well. That part of the cloud.
Yes, absolutely. Anything that needs access to storage.
All right, and coming back to the team who organized your fifth company, who is in your team? You started to talk about that one of your co-founders from previous acquired companies.
Jeff Rubin and Lloyd Dickman are two of the other co-founders of this company, and Jeff Rubin and I have been working together since Stanford. We worked together. We worked on the S1 supercomputers, and this is the fourth company we started together. So we started Valid Logic Key Computer, Pascal, and this company all together.
sometimes people like say, okay, I got the money and that's it. I don't have to do anything anymore. I can be retired, happily retired, not do anything. Why you continue doing what you are doing?
Well, first off, I think that working and contributing, building technology and so forth, to me is much more fun than sitting around, on vacation. In fact, I found, and in fact, I love sailing, but I remember one time I was sailing on a boat for 2 weeks down in the Caribbean, and after a week I was ready to get, to go home because it was just boring sitting around. So I think that we're basically happier and more satisfied in life if we keep contributing to life. Now, you don't have to necessarily work in a job for money. You can do charity work. There's lots of ways. But getting out, doing positive things for the world is I think it's a benefit to the person doing that task.
All right. So we talk about first, second, and fifth company, and we have a little bit of time briefly go about your third and fourth company.
Yeah. Well, the third one was Pascal, as I was talking about, where we built the world's fastest InfiniBand adapters.
And that was eventually acquired and patents used by Intel.
Yeah. And then the fourth company is Schooner Information Technology. And we did a MySQL appliance and a Memcache appliance. And that company was acquired by SanDisk, the company, a large company in the Valley.
All right. So now, from all of your experience in life, what do you think the most would be helpful for startups and people?
I think that one of the key things is to remember that the success of startups can be a function of the whole team. It's not a one-person thing. And I think that I look back, where I was most successful is when I had the best team, right? It's the team that does it, right? Ballot had, in fact, all of these companies had great teams. But, you just look at that, it's the team. In a company to be successful, everything has to work. You have to be able to sell things, service them, support them. You've got to get it engineered right. You have the right product ideas. If anything doesn't, if you have a complete hole in any section, it brings the whole company down. And of course, the other key thing is you have to have a team who works well together. They have to have open communication. They got to, they really want them to like each other and be, a coherent team. It's just like a football team. If they're out there fighting on the field with each other, it's not going to work, right? So you got to have a team that works together. You got to have people who can do their job, and it's really a team effort. And I credit all the wonderful people I've worked with and everything I've done with a lot that's contributed to my success. Because I didn't do, these things were team efforts, right?
Yeah, you also had great professors at Carnegie Mellon and Stanford. Obviously, you also had access to the supercomputers, which cost millions and millions of dollars, and not the average person would be able to even touch or come to those computers.
Yeah.
So you were able to experience or experiment on your solutions, right?
That's true. In fact, one of the reasons we were able to do this, I'd like to credit the John and Fanny Hertz Foundation. John Hertz started Hertz Rental Car and Yellow Cab, left a lot of his money to this John Fanny Hertz Foundation.
The cars we drive in and rent, Hertz.
Yes, right.
So
and they gave me a fellowship that paid my way through Stanford, right? But it meant that I could, me and a number of the other people working in the S1 all had Hertz fellowships, right? And so we had the ability to do what we wanted to do, as opposed to doing something that a professor had a contract to do, right? So we had this freedom to do this, what people considered a crazily ambitious project. People thought we were crazy. How are you going to build a big supercomputer? These students, right? And we came up with a way by automating it and writing the software to do that. And so the Hertz Foundation, paid us so that we had the freedom that we could do what we wanted in our research. This research freedom.
Did they ask you for money back?
No. Well, they like donations.
All right. So, would you like your education paid through?
I'm in high school, so yes, the government does take care of high school.
Okay, high school, so that's good. What about university? Think of the future.
Yeah. Well, they're still there. They're still giving out fellowships. Yeah.
But they have to be extremely smart and deserve that fellowship, or not enough money apparently cover every genius person, which is sad.
Yes.
So, and what would you like to wish our viewers more, as we have a couple of minutes left? And thank you, Tom McWilliams, coming here. It's BaseStorageSolutions.com.
BaseStorageTechnology.com.
BaseStorageTechnology.com. I actually sent it to a few of my friends, and I said, check out the video coming up, because this is very interesting concept. But if you need any information, olgashow.org. That's easy to remember, olgashow.org, and come and ask us, and we can always connect you with Tom McWilliams himself. And thank you for coming to our radio station. And I know it's something different, and I know that some of your exhibits also at Computer History Museum. Is that correct?
There's an oral history online at the Computer History Museum that talks about the S1 project.
Which you work on.
Yes, that's what we did for our research at Stanford. So it's in the Computer History Museum. The Computer History Museum owns the S1 prototypes, and the Mark I is actually on display in Gates Hall at Stanford.
It's nice to be in the museum while you're still alive. That's
Yes.
kind of the best. So you know that you did something really good, not when you are died.
I think if a museum puts something you did in there, you probably did something right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you, Tom, for coming all the way here from far away. And we appreciate your conversation. The video and the interview would be available at olgashow.org. Then it goes to YouTube. It would be available on YouTube for your review. Just search Olga Show, Tom McWilliams, and that's today's date. That would be there available. And thank you again for coming. And if you want to know more information, we also have a video for your production at Comcast, and we're gonna work more. If you want more information about Tom, contact to me. If you want more and learn more and invite him more to our show, let us know, and we do so for you, because Olga Show supports technology, culture, and people. Olga Show from you to you every Saturday night, live on air. And we're coming back.